So we've had some interesting happenings while I've been coughing my lungs up. The Rarebreed FRT and the Russian ammo ban. What the hell? Let's talk about the Rarebreed FRT today, and we've got a video on the ammo ban coming up right after this. Here, we're going to talk about the device, what it is, what's been going on up to now, and what I expect to happen. So stick around.
While the host of Fuddbusters is a lawyer, he is not your lawyer. If you pay him, maybe, either way you slice it, the video that you are about to watch is not to be construed as legal advice.
Right, to start out, the Rarebreed FRT. Most of you have heard about this fancy little bit of wire EDM steel by now, but to put a quick ribbon on it, it's a trigger that forcibly resets, hence the forced reset, on every shot. Because it basically whacks your finger off every shot, it allows for extremely rapid follow-up shots. In fact, some people with poor trigger control have a hard time not double tapping with the trigger. I've shot a few guns with these installed, and the trigger slap feels kind of like firing the worst American-made AK that you've ever seen. I've never had trouble getting single shots off, but whatever. Either way, the way the device was marketed, it was obviously marketed as a kind of go-fast accessory, and all of the marketing surrounds this very fast follow shot, super rapid fire, etc. So what is the thing? Well, if you ask me, it's a device designed by a lawyer very specifically not to be a machine gun. So why do I say that? Well, for one, I've met the guy who designed it, and he's a Florida lawyer like myself. For two, I know what the definition of a machine gun is. A machine gun is a firearm, or device that causes a firearm to fire automatically more than one shot by a single function of the trigger. That definition is written in the law, not in a regulation. It's something that only Congress is supposed to have the power to change. Of course, we know how ATF feels about the rule of law, at least when ATF wants something different from what the law says. It wasn't always this way, of course, but alas. Since 2017, ATF has been pretending that when Congress wrote function into the definition of machine gun, even though they damn well knew the word pull and chose specifically not to use it, that Congress actually meant for that word to mean whatever ATF wanted it to at any given moment. I'm also aware of a culture within ATF which sees new products as attempts to spit into the eyes of the agency, and there's a pretty distinct, palpable hostility going on there. Right, so Rarebreed puts out this slappy trigger. It sits on the market for about a year, and then out of nowhere, ATF shows up to Rarebreed with a cease and desist, stating that they tested the device and determined that it was a machine gun. Of course, Rarebreed asks for proof of such testing, and ATF doesn't have it, and nobody on the call has even seen it, which is just so charming, isn't it? Rarebreed sued to enjoin ATF from acting on its cease and desist. Rarebreed winning on an injunction here would mean that ATF is prevented by the court from taking certain enforcement actions against Rarebreed or its products. Rarebreed is also suing to keep its customers' records safe from ATF's grabby, sharp little metal claws. This last week, ATF finally released those test reports, prepared for His Excellency Special Agent Michael T. Nuttall. The report can only be described as 6 pages of absolute blithering nonsense. I'm serious, it's a bunch of rambling, misdirection, misplaced legalese, and out-of-place technical jargon. Like here they spend the better part of a page blithering on about hammer follow, which is when the hammer will lazily follow the bolt back into battery on a self-loading gun, and this will usually not cause a gun to fire again. It will not fire automatically, usually. Nonetheless, ATF starts this section by declaring that the FRT does not fire with hammer follow. They then spend ages waffling on whether or not a hammer following situation makes a gun a machine gun. Then they take a hardline position stating authoritatively that hammer follow does make a gun a machine gun. Again, this is all after pointing out that the FRT does not hammer follow. ATF goes on to cite a bunch of irrelevant cases to underlie an intentionally counter-statutory definition of machine gun. Most of these cases, of course, have nothing to do with the definition they're asserting. It finally gets down on page 4 and 5 with the actual conclusions. Here, Officer David A. Smith describes how the FRT works, just conveniently leaving out the whole force reset thing entirely. instead describing the resetting lever as basically an autoseer. I believe Officer Smith's meandering, his misplaced legalese, all that stuff at the outset of the letter, was so he could feel empowered to ignore the statutory language, single function of the trigger, and instead use the word pull here in this sentence. Him doing this enabled him to classify the FRT as a machine gun by categorizing the firing cycle as a single perceived pull, because he chose to leave out the fact that his finger was thrust off the trigger and he had to push it back again for the gun to fire. Instead, he just wrote that a maintained pull would continue the cycle, which is misleading. There was also discussion elsewhere that ATF carefully arranged zip ties so that the zip tie could keep the gun running, and was citing this as proof that the FRT was a machine gun. Of course, this ignores the fact that with enough zip ties, you could get just about any gun to do that, and the one time ATF said a shoestring was a machine gun when combined with a Garand-style action. Would this not just mean the zip tie was the machine gun? Of course not, because the government is only bound by its own precedent when it's convenient for the government. So I'm going to take a moment here to take a step back, because people have been criticizing me for defending Rarebreed and stating that my legal textual arguments go against the spirit of the law. One guy complained that these textual arguments are the reason people hate lawyers. I mean, I'm not quite sure what I can say about this while remaining polite, but I'm going to try. For one, and I'm sorry to break it to you, but the text is supposed to be all that matters, especially in the criminal law. That's a feature of our legal system, not a defect. The onus is on the government to tell us exactly what is forbidden. We are entitled to believe that everything not specifically forbidden is a-okay. And if we go up to the bitter edge of what is written that is forbidden, that is called following the law. The simple fact here is that Congress wrote a clear law that used specific language with respect to this. I don't know how to better say this, but if you think going to prison should be based on a subjective spirit of the law rather than the stone-cold text, you're just a dumb bitch. There's something wrong with you. Behind every law is the very real threat of violence. That's why, in a fair legal system, the government must state what is forbidden with extreme clarity. If it's vague or unclear, the government has to rewrite it if it wants to lock people in cages for violating it. Suggesting that the spirit of the law should be enough to lock someone in a cage for something like this ignores this reality and ignores the fact that various incentives guide law enforcement to interpret things differently in different situations. If you disagree with me, that's okay, but 600 years of common law tradition is on my side, not yours. So move to a country with a more free-spirited criminal law like Singapore if you wish to be imperiled by the spirit of the law. Right, so all that aside, we know where the chips currently lie. So what's next? Of course, I can't say anything with certainty, but I think things might go in a number of directions here. If ATF wants to play fair, it will fight it out with Rarebreed in court. I don't love Rarebreed's chances, not because I think they're wrong on the law, but because I remember how bump stocks went. Still, that will take time, precious time. If ATF wants to play dirty and quick, they may decide to pursue enforcement actions against individuals who presently own or sold the devices aside from Rarebreed, making some very public examples. Many of these people are likely to be working-class Americans who can't afford a competent legal defense, which is, again, extremely dirty. I think the law is crystal clear, and I think that, on the law, Rarebreed should win. However, I think the law was crystal clear when it came to bump stocks, and look what happened. The problem here is what I call the gun rule. That's where whenever a case involves firearms, federal judges seem willing to throw anything out the window that they possibly can to give the government a clean victory. This is a very unfortunate state, but it's been the state of the law in the gun space for decades. The only thing that can fix it is strong-willed judges that actually have a backbone, both at the Supreme and lower courts. Here's hoping for that. Again, it only makes sense to be bound by a criminal law that anyone can understand. If it's up for debate and interpretation at any second, that's not the law, it's just tyranny. Well, that's it for today. Let me just say I really appreciate you guys watching and subscribing. It makes a huge difference. If you want to support me more than that, I started up a Patreon and a Subscribe Star. I've got benefits like a patron-only podcast, a Discord. There's surely going to be more to come. This kind of support will help enable me to make more content more regularly, something I'd really love to be able to do. There's also a link to new and improved Fuddbusters apparel, stickers, and of course, the Magic ATF ball in the description below. Thank you all so much for watching to the end and for your support. I'll see you next time, or if you become a Patreon or subscribe star, I'll be happy to see you in the Discord. Remember, the anti-side has been working long and hard trying to pass laws and make more policies like this. Anything more than minimum compliance is self-regulation. Y'all take care.